Welcome guys, and in today's video we're going to be talking about needles. Now there are many factors that go into deciding what needle is right for you in the occasion. So we're going to go over a lot of those things today. So if you're ready to check that out, then let's go. Okay, so starting off, there are three types of needles. This is the most basic stuff to think about. Alright, we have three types. We have liners, we have round shaders, and we have magnums. Now, I'm going to briefly go over those before we go further in depth. Again, we have a liner, we have a round shader, and we have magnums. And in magnums, we have like a straight mag and a curved mag. So, let's do that real quickly. So, let's say this is a liner needle, okay? This is the needles. This is the way they're pulled together on a liner needle. They're pulled kind of tight into the tip here. There's 7 of them right there, okay? 7 needles pulled to the tip. This is a round liner needle. Obviously, your needles are not made of pencils, so I hope you're tracking here, okay? Now, the next one is a round shader. Same 7 needles, just pulled straight down. So you might be wondering, okay, so what's the difference here? Obviously, these are pulled together and these are not. And that can make a big difference later on. Big difference, all right? So those are those two. Now let's briefly talk about the Magnum. So you have two kinds, right? I said you have a curved mag and a straight mag. There might be different names to them, different companies refer to them differently, but nonetheless, that's the basics. So here, I don't know if you can see this. I'll put it in front of my face, but that is a flat mag. As you can see, those needles are straight across. Assuming these are needles, they're markers. And they're double stacked because the majority of the mags you're going to use are double stacked, okay? I don't know if you can see that, but again, 2 lines, they're stacked. 4 on the bottom, 3 on the top. This would be a 7 mag, a flat 7 magnum. Now, if you want to do a curved magnum, this would be an idea of a curved mag, okay? They're just curved. You see that this is straight across. This one here has a bit of a roundness to it, okay? Now right now I'm just going to go over the different needles, and towards the end and later on as we go through it, I'll discuss when you might want to use different things, but I think it's important that we understand the different needles, the different characteristics of them before we go into any more. So again, that's the 3 kinds: a round liner, round shaders, mags. Now with mags we have flat mags and curved mags. So those are the basics there. Now we're going to talk about the diameter of the needles. So each one of those needles that we talked about just a second ago can be in any 3 of these sizes. And there are more, but these are the most common. You have your number 12, which is a 0.35. That's usually your standard. If you buy a standard needle, just regular needles, you know, they're not anything special, they're going to be a number 12. 0.35 is the most common. Now, your next size down is going to be a number 10, and that's a 0.30. Next size down from that is a number 8, and that is a 0.25. Now, it might sound confusing. You don't need to know, like, oh geez, let's get a little gauge out and measure needles. On the cartridges, the packs, when you buy them, it will say what size they are. So we'll come over here, and this says number 10-7RL. 10-7RL. So we know if that's a 10-7RL, then number 10 is equivalent to 0.30. And number 12 needle is equivalent to 0.35. And a number 8 is equivalent to a 0.25. Now, number 12s we call a standard. A number 10 we would call a bug pin. And a number 8 is also referred to as a 00. But anything 10 and below most of the time is considered a bug pin needle. But there is more. So that is what we're referring to there with the diameters. That's all that refers to. When you see a number 12, a number 10, number 8, or a number 0.35, 0.3, 0.25, all that's referring to is how thick that needle is. How thick is it? Is it a smaller needle? Is it a fatter needle? Number 12 being the largest, number 8 being the smallest. And you can still get these smaller and larger, but these are the most common. Next thing we want to talk about is the taper. Okay, the taper is going to be how far the needle comes up. This distance right here. We'll get a zoom in on that right there. That's the taper. How much distance from the tip of that needle till it starts to go straight again. From here to right here, how much distance is that? that's your taper. Okay, so if you had a long taper, it might be somewhere right here. If you had a short taper, maybe it's up here. A medium taper might be somewhere in the middle. And again, right now we're just understanding these. We don't necessarily need to know what we're doing with them yet. I just want to go over all these different pieces and then we're going to put it together. So again, this is the taper. So these are your options. You gotta, as we go through it, these are your main three things. We'll go over one more thing and then we'll start putting the pieces together, I promise. So again, like I said before, this is our liner. I have a fly in here. It's driving me insane. All right, I think he's sleeping somewhere currently. All right, so again, this is our standard needle, right? They're pulled together at the tip. Now, if you had a tight, let's say you had like a 5 round liner tight. You see how these are pulled even tighter together at the tip? Same needles, same everything. Well, same pencils, they're the identical same pencils. These are pulled tighter together. That's all they mean by tight. Tight is literally means we're pulling them together super tight. This, we got a little bit of room, a little bit of breathing room in between, and then with a round shader, it's like straight down, okay? Okay, so we went over the basics. That's what I would consider the basics. Now, real quick, we'll take a look at some needle cartridges. So we'll learn how to read them real briefly, and then I'll start talking about what I use for what and when I use different things, and just give you my opinions and suggestions. All right, we're going to take a look at this needle right here. I believe this is a big wasp needle. Now, on the back of this, it says, if you look at the needle, this particular needle is a 1007 RL/LT. So, what does that mean? That first number, the 10, that's letting me know it's a number 10 needle. The diameter of that needle is 0.30. 07, that's letting me know there are 7 needles in this configuration. RL, round liner, LT, long taper. So while this is a 7 round liner, it is not a standard 7 round liner. This is a bugpin long taper. So this line is not going to be thick. It's not going to look like a standard 7 round liner. I've used this needle plenty of times. This needle is going to make a smaller mark than a 5. It is a very tight, concentrated needle. Good for things, but if you're expecting it to give you the size of a standard 7 round liner, you're going to be sadly mistaken. So let's go over another needle real quickly. Let's take a look at this needle. This is also a big wasp needle, trying to keep it the same. Starting off, this is a 12, so I know that it's a standard 0.35. It says 12. 07, which lets me know there's 7 needles in this. It's a round liner. Okay, so it's a 7 round liner. It's a standard 7 round liner with a long taper. So it sounds a lot like the other needle. Only difference here is that one is a standard 12 and one is a bugpin 10. And these will give you very different marks in the skin. So, things to keep in mind. That's basically how you're going to read your needle cartridges. So, let's jump into now, what are we going to do with this information? So, all these same things apply. Your diameter, your taper, they apply for liners, shaders, and magnums. Okay? So, let's talk about liners real quick and what I use different liners for. Now, I used to start off, when I started tattooing, I used standard 12.35 diameter needles. I didn't know, I just bought the standard and I used those. But as I started learning a little bit, I realized, hey, there are other needles out there, there are other size needles, sure, let me try those out. And I just thought they were better because I was using them and whatnot. Nonetheless, I used them for a while and I'm very grateful I did. I'm glad I tried other needles. What's great is you can try other things and then later find that, I think I like those other ones better for this and that, and I kind of like these ones for that. And so you end up having all the different needles, but you don't use them all the time. So for me, what I've gotten to, when it comes to lining, just straight up lining, no matter what, for the most part, no matter what the size is, I will use a standard number 12. If I'm using a 5 round liner, standard number 12. I'm using a 7, standard number 12. No long tapers, none of that, just straight up. And why do we do that? And why do I encourage you to do that for your lining in the beginning and maybe to continue? It's up to you later on. Because that 5, standard 5, you're on your practice skin or you're on real skin, you know the size. right? If you don't, go ahead and learn it. Any size, pick one. But let's just use 5 for an example. You learned the size, right? And then another tattoo comes along and you're like, oh, I want to go bigger. Well, you know that if you use a 9 now, it's going to be a little bit bigger than that 5. But if you try to be fancy and use that 5 and then you're going to go to that 9, you're like, well, I'm going to go to a number 10, 9, long taper, definitely bigger than the 5, right? You're going to be sadly mistaken. It's not going to be what you're looking for. You're not going to be able to keep consistency in your different line weights because you're trying to learn them all at the same time. So stick with the number 12 for lining. There are other things you can use a liner for. You can stipple with a liner. You can shade with a liner. Those are a little bit more advanced things. And we're not going to go over that exactly in this video, because if you were doing that, you might want to use that 3-round liner with that long taper and a number 10. Maybe. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you want to use number 12 with a 3-round liner and a long taper. Totally up to you, okay? But again, that's not what we're going over here. I just want to give you guys the best advice I can. So when it comes to lining, I would definitely encourage you to stick with a standard round liner. So we use a round liner for lining and for stippling, right? So what do we use a round shader for? Now it goes without saying that it's going to be for shading, right? Well, sure, you can shade with it, you can color pack with it. I specifically do more color packing with this than I do shading. I love the round shaders specifically for packing in color in smaller areas. You want a little bit more control over your mags. Also, they can be used for lining. You can line with these. I have a video we just put out last week and a couple other videos that talk about lining with a round shader. It's very possible. Take your time, watch those videos. They might help you out. But again, this comes in the same way. This is going to be a standard. You can get these in bug pins, double zeros. You can get them in a long taper, a short taper. But again, I will say when you're starting out, just start with a standard number 12. If you go to a number 10, then everything gets smaller. And maybe you want that. Maybe you want it a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact. You know, maybe you want that long taper because you are going to shade with it. And if you're doing some very soft shading, long tapers can help. It's a little bit less traumatic on the skin because it's so pointy, just the tips can kind of do the work. If you have a shorter taper, then more of the needles going in is creating a bigger hole. All right, good for coloring, right? Filling in a tattoo, coloring in a tattoo, color packing. That regular standard taper is going to do pretty well. If you wanted a short taper, it might do even better. It's going to make a little bit bigger of a hole, which could make packing color go a little bit quicker. But you have to be careful. You have to know what type of needle you're using to know how it's going to affect the skin. And that's why I would say just stick with a standard when it comes to round shaders. They're not crazy. I don't think you necessarily need to jump into a long taper or a bug pin. Again, for the same reasons. Get comfortable using your round shaders and get comfortable knowing the size of this. I know this is going to give me an X size. I know this is going to give me that size. If you start playing around with it in between while you're learning these things, you're going to get some different stuff. So what I would say is stick with standard stuff, number 12s, 0.35s, regular tapers, and then buy a box of something that you're interested in. Just one box. Buy a box. Play around with it a little bit. See the differences. Okay? Start to make decisions in your head on what you want to do. But I'm still going to stick with, in my opinion, start with a standard. Okay? Just get a regular. Don't overthink it. Okay. So that's what I would use those for. And I use round shaders often in color packing way more than I do in shading. Can you stipple with a round shader? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can whip that out and get a stippled effect. Again, stroke plays a big role in that, but I'm going to make a video coming up soon where we discuss stroke. You know, the longer stroke versus shorter stroke and what the difference is and what I would suggest for you guys. So stay tuned for that coming up. Now, we're going to get into magnums, round mags, straight mags, okay? Again, what would you use the difference? What is the difference and why would you use a straight mag, we'll call it a flat mag, versus a round mag or a curved mag? For me, I like 100% anytime I'm doing black and gray shading, again, this is for me, I want a curved mag. I want a curved mag because it's soft on the edge. It's curved on the edge. Some brands will call it a soft edge because of that reason. It softens it up. So when I'm tattooing and I'm going into the skin, let me get somewhere where you guys can see, I don't know. When I'm tattooing and I'm going into the skin, boom, 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 like this, right? We're tattooing. Well, now if I want to soften it out, I can use the edge of my mag as well. Okay, I can do this. I feel a little bit more like I have a rounded paintbrush that I have a little bit more control over, right? I can run it from the side, angle it. Now when it comes to a flat mag, if you were to bring it over to the side and do this, well, you're going to get lines because these needles over here are the only thing that's going in there. Or you're going to get it's just not going to look right if you're trying to use the side of your needles. Here you want to keep a somewhat consistent, all right? And by keeping it consistent, you'll avoid getting some streaks. When using a flat mag, at times when you're shading, you can get streaks from the left side and the right side, depending if you're leaning one way or the other. What these are really good for is packing color. If you want to pack color, this is what I would use. Actually, I use both. Be dead serious. I still prefer curved mags, but that's just me. I'm letting you know that either way, I use both when packing color. Because a lot of times it's just straightforward. Pack it up, pack it in, pack it in, pack it in, pack it in. I'm not trying to do any smooth, soft, this, that, and the other. Now, some color work we are, and that's why I like a curved mag. Things you can do with a flat mag, a straight mag that you can't there is you can start to shape lines. You can use the edge of your needle. So I have 7. I can use just that needle on the end there and get a little details in spots just by curling it on the side and using the edge. So you can do a lot of things, right? And so it's going to depend on what you want to do. Again, for me, I pretty much only primarily stock curved mags. I absolutely have straight mags, flat mags, whatever you want to call them, but this is 99% of the time what I'm using. Now that we know, flat mag versus a curved mag and some different things about them, let's go into the different diameters and tapers. Again, if you're just starting out, I would stick with the standard number 12. Learn the standard number 12 size needles. Learn them. Understand. Like, I know what that size needle is going to do. I know what that size needle is going to do. Get comfortable. Get confident. All right. I missed this step in the process, and I had to go back and kind of figure this all out. So nonetheless, stick with number 12. But if you are already moving along here and you're like, okay, yeah, but I want to try some other stuff. All right, still get a box of something else. But I will say number 12 I use for packing color. I use for shading when I want a little less softness. You can still get super soft with the number 12, but just keep in mind those needles are spread out a little further. They're a little bit larger, so that's just the way number 12 is going to be. It's going to be spread out just a little bit further. Standard, spread out a little further. So when you're making those passes, you're going to get more streaks. Or if you're whipping it real quick, you're going to get different dot effects, okay? And if that's what you want, then that's good. And there's a lot of times, where I really like the look of that. But if you are looking for something soft, you want to work in the face, or you just want a little bit smoother, go with a number 10. Now, what's that going to do? It's going to put those needles closer together. And when those needles are closer together, then those streaks are closer together. Those dots are closer together. Everything's a little tighter, which makes things look a little softer, a little more the same, if that's the right word, I don't know. So that's what you're going to get out of a number 10. Now, if you put a long taper on that means it's going to be a little more gentle on the skin. It's going to penetrate quicker because those needles have a longer taper on them. They're a little bit sharper, if you will. So that is that. Now, if you want to get super soft, you're working in the face, you really want this thing to be super soft, you can go to a number 8, a 0.25. The needles are very close together, which is going to give you an even smoother and softer gradation, a smoother and softer look. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind. A standard needle, let's say a 7, might look like this, right? This is a standard. Now, if you were to get this in a number 10, still it has 7 needles, but it's going to be a bit smaller. Okay, if this is this big, a number 10, let's say, is this big. Now, if you get that in a number 8, now those needles are even smaller and pushed tighter together. It's going to look like, it's going to be this size, okay? So keep that in mind when you're choosing. You might be comfortable using a 7 curved mag, and you're like, well, I'm going to go to a number 10 7 curved mag. Well, be prepared for that needle grouping to be just smaller. So if you're thinking you're going to get used to filling this size of a mag, and then you go to number 10, it's going to be smaller. Number 8, it's going to be even smaller. Same number of needles, they're just packed together tighter. So when you're ordering these things or looking to buy these things, keep that in mind. So in case you wanted to go get that 7 Magnum, but you want to get in a 10, so you want to get into a bugpin 7 Magnum, maybe you should up the size, the number of needles in that. So instead of getting a number 10 7, maybe get a number 10 11 round mag, curved mag, so that the size of it stays about the same. You have more needles in there, they're tighter together. I hope that makes sense. And when it comes to packing color, honestly, I would just stick with standard needles, number 12s. I'm sure there's plenty of other people that would disagree, possibly, who knows, who cares? I'm telling you what I think. If you're doing color, stick with the number 12. The standard size, keep things standard when dealing with color, especially at first. Because when you're packing color, you need that surface area to be filled. And if using a smaller, tighter needle, I think you're just wasting your time and potentially just hurting the client for no real reason. So again, the main things you need to focus on, what needle do you need? You can use a round liner to pack color. It's gonna be slow. You're probably gonna need some practice, okay? And it can be a little painful as well. Just depends on what you're doing. You can use a round shader to pack color. You can use a round shader to line. You can use a Magnum to line if you're pretty good and you know what you're doing, okay? I wouldn't recommend it. But you can absolutely use each needle for different things. Think of them like paintbrushes. Could you paint an entire wall with a tiny little paintbrush? You could. Would you want to do that? Probably not. Maybe if there was so much detail on that wall, excuse me, maybe if there was so much detail on that wall, you just had to use that tiny little paintbrush. So be it, then that's the right choice for the job. But if I had to do that, let's say I just need to paint that wall blue, I'm gonna get a roller, aka my Magnum, and just go to town. Big roller, something I can control, nothing out of this world, if I, and I'm gonna fill that wall in. So you decide what you need for the job you're gonna be doing. So again, just get used to this stuff. Don't be scared by it all. If you're really confused and you always hear me using, I use bugpin, I use bugpin. I do use a lot of bug pins. Not so much anymore, I'm pulling back a little bit. I use a lot of number 10s are what I use for black and gray most of the time. Most of the time I'm using a number 10 bug pin for shading black and gray. But other than that, for the most part, I'm using standard needles. Standard number 12 needles, because they just work. So again, you got liners, round shaders, magnums, okay? And you just have to choose the variation that you want them in. Again, stick with standard, and then buy a box of something here and there so you can visually see what's happening. You can get that 7 round liner you've always been using, and then compare it to that one box you bought of a bugpin 7 round liner with a long taper. And you run those lines next to each other and you go, whoa, those are different. What can I learn from these? Can I use that 7, 10, 7 tight round liner for something? Maybe. So just walk yourself through it, but understand what you're getting yourself into, understand the different types of needles, and I hope this video helped you out even just a little bit. There's so many different variations, different angles, or different ways to talk about needles, but I hope today we broke down some basics for you so you really start to understand what's out there, maybe what you should use, what you shouldn't use, and maybe what you should use now and what maybe you could try to use down the road. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you all for all the support you consistently send my way. So thank you guys, I appreciate it. And until next time, peace.